Last week, I found myself in a situation that left me discombobulated. I've combed over this a few times. I've tried to put a positive spin on it, but unfortunately, it's like applying duct tape to an area where you should break out the plaster and fix that hole in the wall because duct tape isn't going to cut it. That's how I feel like trying to put a positive spin on the situation. It occurred last week at the gym in the sauna. The sauna is a unique place. It has a diverse swath of people, let's just say. I'm new to the sauna. The conversation originated with two gentlemen. The guy next to me was in his 70s, the other guy probably in his 60s. White collar types, retirees, good for them. Then there was myself, mid 40s, trying to get back into shape, and a couple others like me, actually. They were talking, and the guy to my left, he was asked, how do you afford all those kids? So I guess, because I entered the conversation midway, he has a fair amount of children. And he said, I started a company years ago, and we developed a vaccine. Now, whenever you say vaccine, right, in today's politicized climate, I could see the other guy, his interest was piqued. The gentleman to my left was going on about how they developed a vaccine, and they developed more. And eventually he said this company was called Pfizer, and I sold it, or I sold my involvement in it. Something like that. And we're not going to talk about Pfizer. This is not where this video is going. And the guy he was talking to, he said to him, how do you feel about what you did and what you were part of? And I thought that was an interesting statement because the man asking that question automatically is coming from the perspective that perhaps we're all in line with his perspective, whatever that may be. In fact, he's so sure of that he doesn't even have to explain what that perspective is. Now, from his tone, I can guess. But again, that's not what this video is about. What proceeded from this conversation was a critical look of the pandemic in 2020. I was a Queens nurse. I was a full-time night shifter. We were some of the first people in the country to encounter Queens, to encounter COVID-19. The patients were pouring in. I came to work one night. There were 8 night shifters, nurses like myself, and there were 108 patients, and there were about 4 ambulances coming in every 15 to 20 minutes. And it was horrendous. I had 20-something patients. That's how many patients I was given. This was the very beginning. This was so much the beginning that while the borders were still open, they were still tracking loose cases in Westchester. This is before you can even get tested for COVID. And at that point, when they did develop the test, they sent it all to Virginia. Like, we're talking about the early days of the pandemic. And of course, a lot of nursing home patients, things like that. It was a tough time for me because my wife was pregnant in her 3rd trimester. We were living a block away. This was Astoria, Queens. And in fact, it was so nuts that my wife and I, we would sit on either sides of the room because we didn't know what this disease was. And my ER was full of it, was donning PPE. I was getting changed in the stairwell in order to go home. I'd put my clothes in garbage bags and then I would just go right to the shower. In fact, it wasn't until almost a month or 2 after my daughter was born that we said, we need to touch each other. We need to sit next to each other. Yes, it was a crazy period, but I digress. According to the person he was talking to, who had his mind made up, I was a liar. He didn't say that, but that's what he was getting at. And look, I'm not here to accuse anybody of anything. The pandemic, in my view, was handled poorly. There wasn't the transparency that there needed to be. People lost their livelihood. Businesses shut down. Kids were taken out of school. A lot of things that would cause people to be suspicious were like all over that period of time. So I get it. Another person in the sauna who didn't help that situation, he talked about how nearby where the gym was a huge hospital. I know that because I was there for a year for a contract. They had set up these huge tents for COVID patients. And according to his mother, who worked those tents, they were empty. Now, I can't substantiate that. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the rumor, and rumors are very powerful. I was put in a position where I had to defend my experience. Here you are talking to a nurse who's in Queens, and you're talking to me as if I didn't see what I saw. Now, where this dark epiphany came from was, if you were a fly on the wall listening to me talk to people about the internet, social media versus real life, I would have painted a picture that real life is everything. Any conversation that you can have in real life there's no comparison, right? It'd be almost as if I painted real life, real conversations with people like an oasis in a desert. If you could just get to water, it'll save your life. It's perfect. It's beautiful. We need more of it. But if you could find an oasis, run there, stay there, never leave. So to me, it was reality next to the internet was perfect, right? If you could talk to people face to face, it would save your life, as opposed to having these conversations over social media. My argument would always be, if you can put that aside and talk to people, that would be saving grace. And what happened in this situation was, I'm with fairly educated people in a situation where we're literally in a contained room and we're talking to each other, and I'm forced to defend my experience. The guy I was talking to was in his 60s. He obviously has accomplished things in life, and he's leaning in there with almost like a lascivious look, like rapey eyes. I mean, that wasn't the intent, but almost like he's like trying to get me. He's trying to get me to say something, to admit something. He's trying to prove me wrong. Which, how do you prove someone wrong when they're telling you their experience? Oh, did you? Oh, did you? Were there patients there? He wasn't saying that, but you can see where his thought process was. And I realized in that moment, though I'm in real life, I feel like I'm in the comment section of a video. It was really disheartening that I could sit with people who somewhat know me, have seen me around, and talk about an experience that I was having. Again, I wasn't defending the politics of the time, the policies. I was simply saying, next to the argument that there were no COVID patients, that we in Queens were swamped. We were so swamped. You want to talk about the power of the paramedic? And I told the paramedic that I did a podcast interview with Redbeard the Medic, who's doing great, by the way. Follow him on TikTok and Instagram, Redbeard the Medic. I told him that paramedics in Queens were making the call whether people would even come to the hospital. They were sick at home, and a paramedic would have the power to say, they're full. There's nothing they could do for this person. That's quite extraordinary. So yeah, we were in it. We were drowning. And we converted the PACU as a sort of spill tank for people we really couldn't help in the ER and who wouldn't benefit from being admitted. To just watch over them, still in a more emergent setting. And it was a tragedy. It was a tragedy of how many people lost their lives. And I remember the guy, again, with those rapey eyes being like, yeah, but what'd they look like? They all have preconditions, right? And yeah, a lot of people had preconditions. I always describe COVID-19 as a disease where if you had something wrong with you, if you had respiratory issues from asthma, if you had some cardiac issue, even if a birth defect, or maybe you had something that was latent, something you're not actively dealing with, COVID would bring it out. One of the more stunning encounters I had was a woman, this was like a year and a half later, who was paralyzed from the waist down, like maybe 38, 39 years old, had to wear diapers, and she was paralyzed from the waist down, and it occurred after she had COVID. And we do know there is a neurological component. My wife got COVID, and for 2 years after, and even to this day, she gets these bouts of dizziness and vertigo. She has to see a specialist for it. We know there's a neurological component to it. And that was my experience. And like I was to recap, my epiphany, the reason why I was so discombobulated was that this infallible thing, this encounter with people that I lauded by saying, anytime you can talk to people, do so, the only way to go. I felt like I was in the comments section of the video, and it was real life. And if this is where conversation is going, it was this realization that, oh my, we're starting to talk and treat each other like we do over our version of the idiot box, this computer, right? They call the idiot box the TV from the 50s on. The computer's like our idiot box or the cell phone. You're not idiots. I'm recording live right now. But if you succumb to its power and its interpretation of reality for you, then it is an idiot box. And quite frankly, the person who accepts that is being an idiot. And I could not believe it. Here I was talking to people. And like I said, I felt like a real life comment section. I just cannot believe that conversation and human encounters have digressed to the point where it's like we're all in a virtual chat room. It's horrible. It's not right to look at somebody in their face, and whether you're calling them a liar or treating them like a liar, to be so overt in what you feel about them. Maybe you should listen to them. Maybe before you say something that's based on what you have researched, you gotta love the people. I've done so much research. You've watched videos based on an algorithm that feeds you out videos that you want to see. Now, I think the internet has been great in exposing injustices as well. You also don't want to fall into what Freud used to call ego knowledge. And I know I'm not going to talk about Sigmund Freud too much. There's a lot of things that he said that just I don't agree with. I'm more of a Carl Jung fan. But if you can read from Totem, the Ego and the Id, or Totem to Taboo, those are good works by Sigmund Freud. He talks about ego knowledge. You know, when you talk, I'm a nurse, right? So maybe I'm talking to a new grad who's going to be a nurse. And I say something like, oh, you're going to be a nurse? I'll tell you everything you need to know. I'm 44 years old. I have an entirely different pathway that I walk on in life. This person is 22 or 23. There's a lot I could teach that person. But if I'm going to stand there and say, this is everything you need to know about nursing, that's called ego knowledge. You got to be careful about that, because that's what the internet and social media strokes. Is that a good choice of words? They stroke your ego knowledge. They stroke this need in all of us. It's a baseless need to be right, to feel like we have a grip on reality, because we don't want to admit to ourselves, even the smartest ones of us, that we still have a lot to learn. So this is my 2 cents. This is me sharing with you this freakish encounter I had, and this very disheartening realization that our conversations have digressed to this point in face-to-face encounters. I used to think, just talk to people, that's all you need to do. But if you were to go from social media to a conversation like that and gravitate to people like that, I don't think would ever know that people never used to function that way. Sure, people had their opinions, but they never used to try to troll you to your face or instigate you or make you like prove what you're saying is true as you're saying it. Sure, there were people like that. They were assholes, but it wasn't commonplace. So look out for that, okay? Please, if you've encountered anything like that, let me know. I want to hear your stories. Now, if you want to follow me, I appreciate that. You can find full episodes and stories and clips, short clips, on my YouTube at nurse/dad. I'm also on Spotify, not on Google or Apple Podcasts yet, but I'm on Spotify. I'm also on social media. That is Instagram at nurse.dad. That's my main hub. Can't get back into my Facebook. It's a whole thing. I'm not even going to get into it. I'm on X at nursedad0, and I'm on TikTok at nurse.dad0. It's not about this superficial need for followers. Until the Nurse Dad podcast, this wasn't me. I wasn't doing this stuff. But I want to get this message out there. I want to get this information out there to people who may need it. I just had a great conversation with Nurse Emily. She's a pediatric nurse and works in a burn trauma unit. Very interesting conversation. She does medical missions to Africa. We talked about that. We talked about some of my military experiences that I had in Africa. Not a medical mission, though I was a Navy hospital corpsman attached to Marines. So please check out that episode. It's on Spotify. It's on YouTube. And I'm going to keep rocking and rolling. Anywho, thank you for listening. Stay humble. Be hungry. Nurse Dad out.